guys, are you interviewing for college soon and wondering how you can maximize your awesomeness in that interview situation? If so, we're going to talk about that today. Before we get started though, I want to remind everyone to subscribe to our channel here on YouTube, and I want to announce some really cool upcoming things with SupertutorTV. One, our ACT math book. I have finished every chapter of the book. We are working on the covers right now. They are going to be out soon, which is super exciting. Two, our ACT prep course is live. It's at SupertutorTV.com. We've helped students improve their scores up to 12 points with an average score increase of 5 points. So go check that out, SupertutorTV.com, if you're prepping for the ACT. And the best SAT prep course ever is going to drop very soon this fall, so keep posted at SupertutorTV.com/subscribe so that you can keep in the know when all this great stuff is out and ready for you. So let's talk college interviews. First, there are two kinds of college interviews, and the way that you approach these is pretty much completely different. So I'm going to talk about, in this video, alumni interviews, and we're going to do another video soon that's about more official interviews. And in that video, I'll also cover, by the way, if you're applying to places like West Point, or you have to like interview with Congress people in order to get their letter of approval so that you can go to a place like West Point. I'll also talk about those kind of official interviews. So anything that's sort of more official, we'll talk about in the next video. For this video though, we're gonna focus on alumni interviews because they're the most common kind of interview that you are going to have the opportunity to fulfill as part of your college application process. So let's get into it. What are alumni interviews? Well, alumni interviews are interviews in which somebody who used to go to that school, and they could be 25 or 45 or 55, is going to sit down with you for 15 minutes to an hour and talk to you about the school, interview you, ask you some questions, and get to know you a little bit. It's a conversation more than just an interview, and it's an opportunity not only for them to put in a few notes about you for the admission committee, but also for you to ask questions about the school that you're interested in. I will tell you first and foremost, this kind of interview is kind of very low on the totem pole of factors that weigh in on your admission. It still counts, but it's not the most important factor. But here are my tips, and let's get into these. Number one, always do an interview unless you feel A, your English skills are a little wonky, or B, you're not very socially adept. Always good to do an interview, but there are a couple of exceptions. One, if you get very nervous about social situations and you find yourself stuttering, or you have trouble speaking in public, or it's really hard for you when you meet new people. If that's you, like I said, interviews are not the most important thing in your application. And most of the time they're 100% optional unless you're applying for a scholarship or doing official interviews, which again are in our other video. So if you're looking at doing an alumni interview, you don't have to do it by any means. And if you feel really socially awkward, if you're like, oh my God, this scares me more than anything in the world, it's probably best that you don't do that. You're probably the kind of person who reads best on paper, and that's fine. The second category of people who I might encourage to not do an interview would be people who may have an accent or might speak English as a foreign language, and their English skills on paper are much better than their English skills while they speak. And if they hesitate to speak, or if they struggle, or especially if you get nervous and then you feel like your English skills sometimes fall apart, then interviews might not be the best idea for you. At the same time, if you don't speak English as a first language, and you think you can hold your own in an interview, or you think you can be captivating enough, or you think you're outgoing enough that you could really make an impression, that could help your application exponentially. So if you don't speak English as a first language, the interview might play more into your portfolio. But again, if you don't have the skills or the chops, it could make you look bad, and you don't want a bad mark on your application. So tip number two, dress right. So dressing right, I know a lot of people on the internet might tell you to like wear a suit or like dress really sharp. And while that might be true for our other video when we're talking about official interviews, when it comes to alumni interviews, that can be super awkward. One of the most awkward positions you can be in on an alumni interview is to be super overdressed in a suit or a like really fancy dress or something, and the interviewer is wearing t-shirts and shorts and you're at Starbucks. That's not to say that you should wear t-shirts and shorts, but you should figure out who is interviewing you and what are they probably going to be wearing. How do you do that? Well, Google the person who you're meeting with and try to figure out what they do during the day, because they're probably going to meet with you during the workday. If they're meeting with you during the workday, they're going to be wearing what they wear to work. So try to figure out, what does this person do for a living? What are they probably wearing to work? And how can I dress in a way that's similar to that? Right? That's probably your best plan of attack. But here's what I'll also say. The safest outfit to wear is what I would call something that's business casual. That means you're a little bit dressed up, but not so dressed up that it's totally awkward if the other person isn't. That means for guys, you can wear a button-up shirt and some slacks. And for girls, you can wear, a nice blouse and slacks, or a dress or something like that, right? You want to look kind of professional, but not so professional that it would be awkward if you're just sitting at a Starbucks having a coffee. Tip 3, connect. More than anything, your interview is about having a conversation and connecting with the person across from you. You want this person to like you. That's the bottom line. This person is not someone from the admissions office. So they likely don't know your grades. They don't know your test scores. They don't know your activities. They probably don't know much of anything about you except that you live in this particular city and you have a name and they might know your email address. That's about it. In any case, it's best if you aren't too robotic and nervous, right? You don't want to come off as this like super nervous 17-year-old who's just like, oh my gosh, like you're an adult and like, I want to go to Duke and I'm really like the school, right? You want to be natural. You want to act as if you're at a family reunion and you're talking to your aunt or you're talking to your cousin. So that's the goal above all, is just chill out, be yourself, be who you are, have a conversation and connect. Tip number 4, come with questions. So the other thing that usually alumni interviewers do at the end is they'll ask you, oh, do you have any questions? And one way that we can connect with people is to let them talk. And I know this seems ironic to let the other person talk during the interview, but there's something psychological that people like others who listen to them. So if you can sit there and be a good listener and have good questions for them, you actually might help make a great impression on the person interviewing you as well. So that's just kind of a cool tip. Finally, my 5th tip is have something interesting to talk about. So to have something interesting to say, twofold idea here. Idea number 1, make sure that you have answers to all the very common interview questions. You can Google a bunch of these. You can even just look through like all the Common App prompts and make sure that you have a good story for all of that. But the difference is, because you're in a conversation, you can be much more relatable in this context. But I recommend that you make a list of a bunch of really bland common interview questions. You can write all those down. You can get on the internet and Google it and just like find a list of like 100 of them and practice answering all of those. The second half of this is make sure that you do a little bit of homework and that you have something interesting to talk about just in a conversational way. What I mean by that is go watch a couple of TED Talks, listen to NPR, read The Economist or The New Yorker or The New York Times this week. Have some current events or some news articles you can talk about. Stray away from anything that's too controversial, but have something to say and have a little bit of fodder for yourself intellectually that you can toss into the conversation to show that, hey, I can jive with the kind of intellectual conversations that you're used to having with other people who are in this academic community. That's about all for my interview tips. I hope you guys liked this video. If so, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel if you haven't already, and check out SupertutorTV.com for more blogs and more on everything great we've got going on here. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned for our next interview video in which we go in depth on official interviews. I will see you next time.